this is the essence of meditation, is recognizing our habitual mental patterns and noticing which ones are unhelpful or even destructive.
Have you ever had one of those days when you're just on, where your mood is bright and you connect with others and get so much accomplished that at the end of your day, your to-do list is complete? Well, unfortunately, if you're like most people, you can't predict or control when those days will happen. So you cross your fingers and you hope they happen when you need them the most.
Welcome to the most exciting adventure of your life. Welcome to a new way of living. Welcome to the Fierce Planet Adventures podcast. Hi, I'm Casey.
And I'm Andy. And we're a married couple on a mission to inspire and guide 1 million people to live a life of purpose, passion, and self-mastery through the 5 mountains of cutting-edge human development.
Our guest today focuses her work on how to teach you ways to get mentally fit and experience more of those on days where you're operating at your optimal state and you feel and perform your best. She's the author of the best-selling book, On the Verge, Wake Up, Show Up, and Shine. In 2020, she was named one of the 12 most powerful women in the Mindfulness Movement by Mindful magazine. Her signature body-brain strategies have led to partnerships with the Flow Genome Project and with wearable and wellness brands including Insight Timer, RoundGlass, Muse, and Happify. Her work in mental fitness stems from over 15 years as the founder and director of Verge Yoga and Meditation Center, and as a mental strength coach to over a dozen Division I collegiate sports teams. As a former competitive figure skater, she turned professional in her teens and had a blast in her 20s finding flow while traveling the world and performing for Rollerblade. Welcome, Cara Bradley.
Thank you. Thank you both. I love hearing some of those stories, in the bio. It just brings me joy to see the journey unfold.
Oh, that's great. And what an amazing journey too. But just to start things off, tell us what you're grateful for today.
Wow. Yeah, I have so much great gratitude today, but I think I would say I'm grateful for the journey that my husband and I are on right now as we cross the country in a houseless state, really just discovering the freedom that comes without having a lot of tethers. So I'm just grateful for the opportunity to do that.
That speaks to us. I mean, that's a subject or a way of living that's near and dear to us, because that's what we do to some extent. Is we get out and we travel, and we have a home base, or we have a base camp, not a home, but we travel a lot and we love to get out and adventure. Have you always lived this way, or was there some pivot point or some decision point in your life that sparked this?
No, I definitely haven't always lived this way. It's fairly new as of the end of 2020, I would say. Being that I've been an entrepreneur for most of my life and have had several bricks and mortar businesses, I've had to be very planted and very grounded. So I owned a yoga studio, Yoga Meditation Center, on the main line outside of Philadelphia. And we sold that business just before COVID. And it really kept us grounded for almost 16 years. So I was just looking to be ungrounded or untethered for a bit. And we'll see how long this lasts, but it has been an absolute blast.
Amazing.
Oh, great. I just love to hear those stories.
Absolutely. And just thinking about the dynamic of living location independent, how or has that affected your marriage at all?
Well, Brian and I we've been married for 30 years, and we have 2 grown children. And we've always worked together in some capacity. We have really been partners in many aspects of our lives. So for us, we did this cross-country trip in 2019 for 2 months. And I had several people ask, oh my God, like, how did you spend so much time with your husband? And I said, and you guys may attest to this, we never run out of things to talk about, because we work together and we're very curious, we're very interested in a lot of the same things when it comes to performance and consciousness and awakening and our planet. we're just always talking about something. So yeah, I mean, of course you have your little cranky moments here and there when you get hangry, but but for the most part, it's really been a dream.
Nice. Um, so when you have to let go, when you go from a brick and mortar type existence or way of living to location independent, we had to give up a lot of personal belongings. What was your process for that? Was there a lot of emotion involved in that process, or did you just kind of like cut the cord and head out? Friends, if what we're discussing today, the 5 domains of cutting edge human development, sounds interesting to you and you want to experience it for yourself, a great place to start is the Unbeatable Challenge. You can try it for free now. There's a link in the show notes, and it's a great way to really jumpstart your 5 domain training and become really clear on your goals for this year and how to crush them. We did this challenge earlier this year, and it was a great way to find clarity and redefine our mission, our purpose. And Casey and I also used it as an alignment piece in our marriage to make sure that we were on the same page. So the link is in the show notes. You can try it for free now. Don't wait. Don't hesitate. Take action.
Well, it definitely is a process, and we tell people this all the time. I mean, it's almost a few years of letting go, undoing, untethering, unblocking. And so it started with us selling our home. We had, traditional home in the suburbs. And I was seeking more freedom just because I felt so bound down with a house in the suburbs and a business that was just 24/7 every day of the year. And I needed to let go of something. And so getting rid of the house, the kind of big house, if you will, with all the stuff, and moving into an apartment, a rental, was our first step. And as I tell people, we did put stuff in storage, and we still have some stuff in storage, but then we downsized our storage. And so it's a process, and it happens physically, it happens emotionally, it happens energetically. Like there's all these different layers of letting go. And I'll tell you what, when you start to let go of your attachment to stuff, there is a mental freedom that emerges. And I truly believe that our stuff weighs us down mentally. And it doesn't mean that everybody has to become a minimalist, but if we change our relationship to stuff, it does release something mentally. And it's amazing.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think we found that same thing when
Oh,
we went through that process.
absolutely. And personally, I found the hardest things to get rid of were things that were gifts from people that I had that memory of a time, spending good times with people. But I found taking little pictures of things and storing
Exactly.
them really helped with that process. But I can totally attest to what you're saying about having that feeling of freedom, just having less stuff to think about and hold on to.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember when I went through all my photo albums, and I had like these elaborate photo albums from when I was a kid. And I took pictures like you just said of the important ones. And I remember putting them down the chute in my apartment building, the garbage chute. And there was such an incredible release. It was like I'm holding my memories in my heart, and the good ones are part of who I am. But I don't need all these pictures of me with like red Solo cups in my hand.
Awesome. Cara, we love to hear about our guest's journey. Was it a winding path or a straight shot for you from competitive figure skater to mental fitness coach?
Oh man, it was so crooked.
Amen.
I tell people that, I could wallpaper a small powder room with the number of business cards I've had in my life. My road's been, it has been a winding road, but it's been a beautiful journey, and a journey of listening to what is the next step. Like where is my heart calling me forward? Where is my curiosity? What am I most enthusiastic about? And I think that I've been fortunate enough to be able to do that. And so my journey started, I was a competitive figure skater, and at 15, I turned pro. It was something you had to do back then, and I started teaching because I wanted to continue skating, but I couldn't pay for it. My parents cut me off. And so I started teaching at 15 years old, and I really haven't stopped teaching something since then. And that's a long time ago. So it's always been a process of what I'm most enthusiastic about, where I'm really at the edge, on the verge, what's kind of having me shake in my boots a bit. And that's where I want to teach, because that's the most alive in me. And I feel like I can teach my best, not from some old curriculum, but from what's real and emerging for me right now. And so that's taken me through quite a number of things.
Right on. So I have this image in my mind of, watching different stories over the years about figure skating that, you're up at the crack of dawn, or, before dawn, 4 a.m., getting to the rink and training all day long. Is that how it unfolded? Is that where, the discipline formed for you?
Yeah, I would say for the most part, I was up before school on the ice. Now, I will say I was mediocre. I mean, I was not, someone you heard of, but it left such an imprint on my nervous system, because back then we used to do something called figures, where we would get a patch of ice and we would have this big compass called a scribe. And for an hour, you would trace out a figure eight. And for an hour, you would trace that figure eight on the edge of a blade. So you were either on an inside edge, an outside edge, going forward, going backward. And they've done away with figures in figure skating in that capacity, because most young skaters absolutely hated it. For me, I relished it. I loved it. And what I learned back then, of course, I didn't know it, but I learned the subtle connection between mind and body. I knew that if I was thinking about what I was doing, I would go flat on my blade. And if I could let go of thinking or trying and let my body find its way, that's when I would catch the edge. And so it was really my first introduction to flow states, to deep body mind connection, to optimal performance, and so much more that I've learned as an adult.
Great. Well, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say there's so much there to talk about, but something that you did mention is that body-mind connection. And just, I know we've read a lot recently about the studies behind that. Can you tell us a little bit more behind just the importance of connecting to the body?
Yeah, I mean, that's really my life's work, is helping people get out of their head and get into their body, and to trust the intelligence that's streaming through 24/7. I mean, we are so extraordinarily intelligent that we could sense each other without uttering a word. We just know what's happening with each other. But we've lost that capacity because we get so stuck in our thinking mind, our mental patterns. So a lot of my work has been in my own journey and understanding that, what does it feel like to be embodied, to actually move and speak in the world from my body as opposed to just my mind. So, it's incredibly important. And any athlete will tell you, throwing the free throw or hitting the ball, or, defending, whatever you're doing, when you're doing it below the neck, you're going to be so much more successful and so much more on task than when you're stuck in doubt, fear, and all those mental patterns. So, it's a process. And I know the two of you have done deep work in yoga and embodiment practice. And, different people come to it in different ways. And I've been very careful in my work to not pressure people into any one style of movement or mind training. I think it's really important for us to tinker and play, and to know that it will change over the course of our lives, to not become so fixed on any one discipline. I think is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. And what really resonated there with me is the importance of finding your own path to that. And it's just because something worked for, your friend doesn't mean that's going to be the ticket for you. So, like you said, tinkering, playing around with different practices and really feeling into them and what speaks to your heart.
Yeah, in our yoga teacher training program that, I've trained a lot of teachers, I would always remind these teacher trainees who are so enthusiastic, we're guides, not gods. I mean, we want to be guides, a gentle guide. And sometimes, yeah, you could be a badass guide, but you want to be a guide and not a god, and to recognize that everybody has their own stream of intelligence, and to really revere that intelligence and to facilitate experience as opposed to, really dictating what people should be experiencing.
Oh, 100%. Right. There's that balance between, being a guide and being a fellow journey person on the road with the people that you're working with. But also sometimes, we all need a kick in the butt, a metaphorical kick in the butt. So, what does that look like to you? Do you kind of ease into it with clients? Do you ask them what's your process for accountability?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, when I was training, I trained the Villanova football team and basketball team. The football team, I was with them for 14 years as their mental strength coach. And I would always bring them into challenging yoga positions. It doesn't mean it was a complicated one, like all twisty. I mean, these guys are pretty muscular, but just a simple hold, and to guide them up there to the edge. And this is what I talk about in my book, on the verge, really being at the edge of what you're comfortable and familiar with. And it's right there at the edge. If it's not too much, you're able to actually sustain it and learn what it feels like to be in unknown territory, learn what it feels like to be out of the nest, to shake and bake a bit. And that's where we become familiar with ourselves in these opportunities to really outperform ourselves. So if we're not giving ourselves, if we're not stepping up to that edge or verge or boundary in different aspects of our lives, we're really just kind of coasting in comfort zone. So we need to do that. And so that's really where that accountability comes in. How are you challenging yourself today? How are you stepping up and out of familiar and comfort to see life with new eyes?
Brilliant. I love it. Thank you. So something that just a few minutes ago, we were talking about flow. And that's a topic that comes up quite a bit these days. What is it to you? What is flow?
If you've been listening to our podcast or following us on socials, it's probably no surprise to you that I've been dealing with back issues for many years. And I want to take a moment just to tell you about something that I found that's helped me with my flexibility and durability and mobility. And that's called Kokoro Yoga, somatic warrior training. It's not just yoga. It also includes Tai Chi, Qigong, visualization, meditation, and breathwork practices such as Fit Warrior, Fighting Warrior, which incorporates functional fitness and some martial arts movements. And it's been just a really great way for me to maintain some flexibility and durability as I move through our challenges when we go and do Spartan races and climb mountains. So if this sounds like it's something that could help you out, check it out. The link's in the show notes.
Well, I will bring you back to when I was a college track runner. I ran the 800, and I had a full out flow experience. My last track race, I kind of had nothing to lose, nothing to gain, nothing to lose. And I just went for it. And I shifted into what I call an extraordinarily ordinary state of being. I felt like I was more myself than ever. I was calm. I was wide open. I accessed strength I didn't know I had. I had very little thought moved through me, no doubt, no fear. And I felt light and bright. And so I didn't know it then, but that race changed my life because I recognized I had accessed something that was available to me all the time. And you kind of alluded to it at the beginning of this, it's accessible all the time, but how do I access it on demand? And that led me into my study of yoga and meditation, because I looked at those two lineages as well practiced disciplines for training the mind and body. And so that led me deep into those practices, which then allowed me to understand flow states more fully. And so flow, and I've done some work with some of the greatest flow experts in the world, really, Stephen Kotler and Jamie Wheel. I've practiced, learned from, and worked with them for years. And of course, their work is based on Mikhail Csikszentmihalyi's seminal work on flow states or optimal experiences. And so flow isn't necessarily, climbing El Capitan like Alex Honnold, which, oh my God, just watching that movie is a flow experience. I've watched it several times, right? And a lot of people think, oh my gosh, I don't do those high consequence type of things. How can I find flow? And a lot of my work has been to point to flow experiences in deep nature, in deep embodiment practices, in meditation, in playing with your dog, right? In birthing a child, in sitting with someone who's dying. There are flow, these extraordinarily ordinary experiences that are at our fingertips all the time. So when we start to become familiar with, I love using that word, those two words together, when we become familiar with our own experience of flow at the outer fringes of our lives, again, coming back to that challenge, that verge, that edge, then we can start to recognize these moments of full aliveness in everyday life, in working, in talking to people like you, brings me into an aliveness that can be, thought of as sort of a micro flow state.
Brilliant. Yeah, it's quite amazing. And I certainly could speak to some little experience around that, just experiencing it first time ever rock climbing. So you have that slight danger or risk in, the back of your mind and pushing that out. But also through coaching, I found, letting go of the thinking mind and just settling in and, going with the flow of the conversation and sinking in it's a much more natural process and much more enjoyable, not as nervous and, caught up on what's going to happen next or what's going to say next. And so it's quite an amazing experience. Do you have any tips or what are some triggers to tap into that flow?
Yeah, and you said the great words. What are the flow triggers? And so I'm going to ask you guys a question, if that's okay.
Sure.
And you don't have to answer it right away. But what are your primary flow activities? When we know what our primary flow activities are, where we can go to for these optimal experiences, it's really helpful. A lot of people don't even realize that, cooking could be one of their primary flow experiences. So flow, when you think about it in sort of a definition, if you will, it's where action and awareness merge. It's where what you're doing and what you're feeling become one. So you lose your sense of self, you lose your sense of self-consciousness. Time seems to slow down or speed up. There's this warping of time where you feel this aliveness and this connection, this deep connection to yourself, your environment, and others, if there's others involved. And oftentimes your performance goes through the roof. What you're doing, like my experience on the track, you experience life in a much brighter, lighter, way. So great book, Stealing Fire by Stephen Kotler and Jamie Wheel. They talk about stir. Stir is a way to think about flow, selflessness, timelessness, effortlessness, and a richness in your environment.
Well, great question. And I guess if to answer your question, I can think of several instances, well, maybe a couple instances, but also a couple areas where I experience flow maybe more regularly. And, historically, I guess for me, they usually come around outdoor activities. I can specifically remember the first time I did a snow climb on South Arapahoe Peak in Colorado. First time ever. And there was a little bit of fear involved, right? Because it was a new experience for me. But once I got, in the rhythm of step, kick, step, place the ice axe, the whole time just fell away. And it was just, even though I was with a team and I was cognizant and mindful of the team, it was a really individual experience. And the focus that came with it, and just the senses coming alive, and the whole experience, it almost was just me and the snow on the mountain, going up. I think that was the first time I actually recognized a flow state. And then there's been other times with just work, right? Tapping into important, fun, meaningful work that had purpose to it. And just, again, time just fell away. Time was distorted. And before I knew it, 4 hours had passed. One of those types of situations. On a more regular basis, though, I find it when just time in nature. And it usually doesn't happen, for example, on a hike. It doesn't happen usually within the first couple miles. It's not till that 4 or 5 mile point where the stress of my life or the day has bled off, and my monkey mind has settled down, and I'm just able to see and listen to the world around me. And before you know it, you've come 8 miles, 9 miles, and it's time to turn around or make the loop. And you're like, wow, this is just an amazing experience. And where did the time go?
Yeah, it's so great. And big nature, by the way, is a key flow trigger. So how can you, not be in flow if you are walking the Grand Canyon? Or if, like right now, I'm in the Upper Peninsula in northern Michigan. And we drove here last night and the sun was setting, at like almost 10 o'clock. The sun was just setting. It was crazy. And we're seeing the sky over Lake Superior. And it's just like, oh, wow. Big nature, even small nature, even just in your backyard in the woods can ground you, because nature is always present. Nature's not thinking, oh, it's windy, it's sunny, it's raining, it's, I can't believe she said that. Nature is just supremely present. So it pulls us, it entrains us into a more present state. And so does high consequence. So you were talking about the ice climbing. High consequence will trigger flow. I mean, almost every time you put yourself in danger, and I know Unbeatable Mind and Mark Divine's work, certainly there's so much, there's so much around that, just pushing edges and almost going to failure. There's something so ripe right there. And so high consequences, and it could be a speech, right? You don't have to be up on a mountain. It could be a presentation to your cohort. That could be a high consequence for you, and it could trigger flow.
Oh, absolutely.
So along the lines of flow, we saw on your website an open invitation to folks to join Team Flow.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us a little bit about that project?
Yeah, this is one of the main projects that I'm working on right now, besides just helping educate people on mental fitness. So a couple of years ago, I learned about the new science of the gut-brain connection. And it's fairly new. It's less than 5 years old. What we are learning about is extraordinary. And I think for people like us that are geared toward performance, high performance, optimal well-being, it's really a missing piece. And that's what I felt like in the first hour that I learned about the gut-brain connection. I just want to preface it to say that I have been deep in study around nervous system training, nervous system regulation. How do we optimize the default state that our nervous system hums at moment to moment so that we just feel better and perform better more often? Because most of us, as you know, we're in chronic stress, right? Micro trauma, especially right now. So I've spent a lot of the last 5 years in deep breath practice and sleep practice and cold exposure and all these different ways to tone the vagal nerve. So when I learned about the gut-brain connection, I was blown away because it's even deeper than nervous system training. So what we are learning about is that the gut microbiome is hugely impactful, or hugely impacts our mental health, our mental wellness, and our mental performance. And the science, the research keeps coming out more and more and more, telling us that our microbiome, which is really this environment of trillions of bacteria, viruses, and other microbiota, and it primarily lives in our lower intestines. When our microbiome is out of whack, is imbalanced, is what's called in dysbiosis, it is going to impact every aspect of our lives, including our stress resiliency, our moods, our ability to focus, our ability to sleep, our ability to just be in life and feel happy and motivated. And one of the primary reasons for that is because most of let's say 90% of our serotonin, one of our feel-good neurotransmitters, is produced in the lower intestines. 90% of our serotonin is produced by bacteria in our lower intestines. So it's almost a byproduct or a postbiotic is this serotonin. 70% of our dopamine, our motivator, the neurotransmitter that gets us up and out of our seat and on that run, is produced in our lower intestines. GABA, another feel-good, relaxation neurotransmitter, and norepinephrine, which is our neurotransmitter that helps us to focus. So it's produced in the lower intestines. It's then signaled up to our brain via the nervous system, the immune system, and a couple of other things that I won't get too specific on. So for me, as a strength coach, as a performance coach, as a, meditation teacher, this was like, oh my God, are you kidding? Like, we can't do enough meditation to make up for a microbiome that is not balanced, our gut microbiome. So it took me deep into this. And I was introduced to a company that is focused on improving people's mental wellness and mental fitness by helping people to rebalance the microbiome, prime the signaling channels, the immune system and the nervous system, to then enhance and optimize mental wellness, mental fitness via focus, mood, stress resiliency. So Team Flow is really the collection of people that are coming together around this company and around this education, really helping to educate people on the gut-brain connection. And that's what Team Flow is, because, we really believe in optimal well-being and performance.
Absolutely. Oh, wow. That is just so fascinating. Hearing about the dopamine, the serotonin, I mean, these are things that traditionally you hear at, media, social, that it's all the brain. It's all produced in the brain. If you're not producing enough, there's some signal not connecting in your brain. And to hear that this is actually produced in the lower intestine, and we might be able to affect this in different ways other than, oh, my brain's broken, or, going straight to that just opens a whole new door. And it's exciting to hear that they're are a group of folks out there trying to share this message and dig deeper into it.
This episode of Fierce Planet Adventures podcast is brought to you by 5 Mountain Coaching, licensed unbeatable mind coaching, integrated accelerated vertical growth across 5 domains of cutting-edge development designed by retired Navy SEAL Commander Mark Devine. Learn the big 4 skills of mental toughness and resiliency. Discover the 6 pillars of performance. Test your mettle with custom-created crucibles across all 5 domains. Visit 5mountaincoaching.com to schedule your free 1-hour unbeatable mind coaching session. That's the number 5, mountaincoaching.com. Begin your journey to becoming unbeatable today.
Yeah, and there are certainly some of our neurotransmitters are produced in the brain, and I am not a scientist, so what I know though, however, is that our gut microbiome is thrown out of whack primarily because of obviously poor food choice, stress. Who doesn't have that, right? The environment or environmental toxins and pharmaceuticals. So if we can just start to look at those 4 areas of our lives, less stress, which we know what to do now. Most of us understand what at least we need to do or could do to reduce stress. Better food choice. I think a lot of us understand, how to eat well. Toxins and pharma. If we can start to move our microbiome in the right direction to modulate or rebalance, then, we may start to feel better mentally. So, I feel like it's the root, we're getting down to root causes, which has been a real investigation of mine.
So with your research, have you come across any, I don't want to use the word hacks, but outside of what you just mentioned, is there anything that folks can do to tune up their gut biome?
Yeah. So there are a couple of things. First is to focus on food. And so the bacteria, and there's thousands of strains of bacteria, and research is now getting very specific about which strains, when healthy, help to reduce the effects of depression or help to stabilize anxiety. I mean, we're getting that specific, which is so exciting. But when we can focus on eating a very diverse and rich plant-based diet, and I'm not a proponent of any specific types of diet, but what I do know is that the more diverse our plants are, those plants are going to feed the bacteria, because each little bacteria in there is chomping on different types of fiber. So cauliflower may impact certain types of bacteria to help those bacteria flourish. So that's why we want to have a diverse amount of food. There's a great book out there, Fiber Fueled. Dr. Will B. is, I can't pronounce his last name, I'm sorry, but it's Fiber Fueled. And he talks about having at least 30 different types of plant in your body every week to really work on diversity. So that's number one. Now, what I have gone deep into are specific plant micronutrients that we can add to our diet in the form of supplements that help to boost certain strains of bacteria and help to clean up the gut and prime the immune system and nervous system to help really enhance that mental fitness. So there's nutrition and nutritional supplements, I think, is the first place for us to start. And then, like I said, stress, environmental toxins, and pharma, if you can, taper off.
Thank you. So what comes up to me for me when you say supplements is I go automatically to the probiotics. Is that something that you're thinking about right now? Is that what you're
right
talking about?
That's part of it. Absolutely. So probiotics are ingesting bacteria into the body, right? And we can get very specific, or we're getting more and more specific on not just grabbing something from the supermarket, but understanding, these strains of bacteria that I'm putting in my body, when they flourish, they help to increase stress resiliency, or they're helping to reduce the effects of depression or anxiety. They're helping to, there's so many, I'm not even going to go too far into the science of it all because it gets really specific. So probiotics, then there's the prebiotics, which are the specific fibers that are going to feed those specific strains that you're ingesting. So we can get very specific. Okay, I'm going to take this probiotic and the prebiotic so that those new bacteria that I've just ingested are happy. And then there are micronutrients, the polyphenols that are helping to keep things flourishing, to reduce the effects of irritable bowel syndrome or just what happens in a sluggish microbiome. And so and then it goes up the chain, up through the nervous system, the immune system, like I said, to the brain.
Wonderful. So what I'm hearing is it's not just one thing, it's a combination of things. And it's not just our gut, it's our gut, it's our heart, it's our brain. They're all connected and they all need to be humming in balance for that optimal state.
Totally, 100%. We have our brain, our second brain is our gut, and our third brain is our heart. And when we can understand how to synchronize these systems, it comes back to what we talked about earlier, getting below the neck. We can't, something I used to say in class all the time, we can't think our way to peace. We can't think our way there. It has to be in synergy with how our body is humming. What is our heart rate? What's our breath pattern like? How are we settled into our body in this moment? That can help to settle a busy mind. So it goes both ways. It goes body up and it goes mind down. And most of us are so focused on the mind that we forget the intelligence of the body.
That brings me to another question is, we hear so much about mindfulness. It's a term that gets thrown around a lot these days. What does mindfulness mean to you?
Mm-hmm. It's such a loaded question. I actually don't use the word mindfulness all that much anymore because I do think that people, and this happened with yoga as well, it gets so overused out there and so diluted that it loses its meaning. But what we can do is, and what I believe the essence of mindfulness is becoming familiar with patterns, how we are moving and acting in the world. And I love the definition of meditation from in the Tibetan language is GOM, GOM. And GOM means to become familiar with. So a lot of people think mindfulness is always being present, is always being peaceful, is always being calm. And that's just not going to happen. In fact, sometimes we need that U stress. We need the EU stress, the good stress to push our buttons, to help us shake us up out of comfort. But becoming familiar with our mental patterns. Oh my gosh, I always go to the negative. Or why am I always judging other people? Or, why do I always land in doubt before anything else? This is the essence of meditation, is recognizing our habitual mental patterns and noticing which ones are unhelpful or even destructive. And we can bring that into our emotional patterns or our breath patterns or our physical patterns. So mindfulness, in the sense of Jon Kabat-Zinn, who is kind of our founding father of mindfulness, is to pay attention on purpose, moment to moment, without judgment. So right now, I'm noticing that, I'm kind of hungry, right? It's kind of at the time where I break my fast and my stomach is starting to gurgle. That's just being mindful of a physical pattern. So I think when we can take it down to that level, it takes it out of the woo-woo, right? Mm-hmm. And into the practical. I'm a very practical teacher. Like, let's put these great practices to work for us.
Wonderful. A couple things came up for me there. that being aware of our triggers, being mindful, it's not all, hocus pocus and, unattainable states, right? And also it's, you're going to struggle in life, right? There's no magic bullet. There's no cure. There's no one practice that's going to keep you in that perfect state of being continuously. And we don't want that as human beings. We want to be pushing our boundaries, feeling that eustress, and stepping outside of our comfort zone, because, well, quite honestly, I don't think there's much fun in constantly being in that state, right? That's not a way to go through life. But even the professionals, even people who are trained in these different aspects and these different modalities, we still have issues. We still have things that we have to overcome. It's just being able to stop and bring, to shine a light onto those different aspects of our personality, of our traits, of how we show up, of what our triggers are. And once we can do that, that's where the magic happens, that's the beginning state of the magic. And once we bring that awareness, then we can take action to either accept that or change that. So thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you're spot on, and Andy, what you're saying is really, it comes to the idea of we instead of just me. This isn't about me all the time, me, optimizing, me, performing well. What happens when we start to become more aware? And I love that you said shine the light, because I love that. Awareness is just shining the light, shining a light on a specific aspect of how we're living. When we can shine the light on how we're living, and we can become intimate and become familiar with that deep doubt, the feeling of unworthiness, the fear of failure, the fear of not being able to show up for others. When we can become very intimate with that, it breaks our heart open. All of a sudden now, I could see that in somebody else, like, oh my gosh, she's struggling with that too. So instead of judging her or throwing darts at her, now that compassion, that kindness, that willingness to allow somebody to kind of sort it out, that now we're talking about we instead of just me and my own journey. And really, at the end of the day, we practice so that we can move in the world and as Ram Dass said, walk each other home.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I remind myself of that all the day, that every day, this isn't about me, this is about we.
Yeah, absolutely. My philosophy is that we can clean up ourselves all day long, but to what end, right? If it's just to serve ourselves, then it seems like it's a very myopic view, and it doesn't really serve anybody else other than yourself. It's very selfish. So when you do it, clearly there's a selfish aspect to helping yourself and growing, but there should be an outward purpose to that. And being in service to your family, your friends, society, your community, that's where the real traction happens, is when you can turn those insights and bring them out into the world.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, what I'd like to add there is, we have to start with ourselves. And for some people, because of their life experience, and it may take a while just with me. And so, I'm very careful to never pass judgment on anyone if they are really focused on their own self-development, because it may take, it took me a long time. I mean, I think I was pretty selfish there for a long time. It took me a long time to really embrace my own, to really be kind and loving to myself enough to put down my own armor, I was born, I'm an only girl in between two boys in an Italian American family. I was kind of a very independent and, really kind of had a, not cry a lot, and it took me a long time to really shed that armor to be able to be more soft and gentle in the world. So, we all need to give each other a big break and, walk each other home.
Yeah, perspective taking for sure.
And I love that you mentioned just that aspect of it does start from within, but as you kind of develop and growing yourself and have that compassion for yourself, that's when you're able to start sharing it with others. And as you move up that ladder of awareness, if you will, it does become more about the love that you're projecting towards others, not just that self-serving feeling. So just something I see in society a lot. I think a lot of people could benefit from looking a little bit more outside themselves, but definitely key to loving yourself first to be able to provide that to others. So I love that you did bring a focus to that too. So thank you. I was going to say, we want to be respectful of your time as well. Did you have another question? Or?
Well, I've got a few, but again, I want to be respectful.
I have a call at 11.
Okay.
So, but we've got 6 minutes. We can go right up to the end.
Well, we'll be quick then. So we talked about mindfulness, but mental fitness is one of the key topics that you train and you discuss, and that's one of your focuses. How does that differ from mental health?
That's a great question. When we think about physical fitness, I remember in my lifetime when people started jogging and then they started doing calisthenics and then they started to understand about strength training and different ways to become physically fit. And I think that's where we are now with mental fitness. People have the understanding of how do I cross-train my body? Well, now let's start thinking about how do I cross-train my mind? How do I cross-train my body-mind in order to feel my best and perform my best? And it includes the body 100%. Physical fitness is a major component of feeling mentally fit or mentally well. And so mental health, yes, is a component of this all. But I like to have people focus on mental fitness to include a host of different ways to train. And it starts at the gut, right? So we have the gut training and we have breath, excuse me. So we have gut training and we have breath training. And we have muscular training and physical training in that respect. And then we have sleep hygiene, and there's cardiovascular training. And then we can go up to the mind, and there's mental training, such as mindset training, like you all are expert in, and mindfulness training, or just really awareness training. So there's so many things we can do, and we don't have to do them all every day. Mm-hmm. But to really think about how do I challenge myself, right? Because the only way we get fit is, right, we have to challenge so that our muscles adapt and grow, so that our heart has to adapt and grow. And it's the same thing with our mind. So there are all aspects of cross training, and really mental fitness is an optimized way of being mentally well. And so we start with mental health, go to mental wellness, and then start to really train in mental fitness.
Great. Oh, thank you. Because I think in my experience, or our experience, that one domain or one area informs the other area. So your physical training will inform your mental training and your emotional intuitive training. So you've got a whole new offering of mental fitness courses for 2021. Can you give us a glimpse of what that looks like?
Yeah, great. So I've done a couple of courses for these great wellness platforms. I have a mindful movement course on Mindful Magazine right now that we just put out in February. And that really moves you, like, how do we actually move mindfully and use movement as mindfulness training? And then I have a course coming out in July with RoundGlass, a new platform, how to get mentally fit. And this will take you through all types of really of short practices to regulate your nervous system to feel well more often. And just now starting to create a new course for Mindful on moving in flow. So that'll be coming out as well. And just, all the other stuff that I have out there. I'm always talking about this stuff.
Oh, great.
Awesome. And we'll have links in the show notes as well to your website. I believe it's carabradley.net.
Exactly.
And link to the book on the Verge, and as well as your podcast and the courses. So we'll have access for listeners here. And thank you so much for taking the time with us. This has been just an amazing conversation that we definitely could continue, but
thank you.
Thoroughly enjoyed it.
Well, thank you
Absolutely.
both, and thank you for all that you put out there. And I look forward to continuing our journey together.
Absolutely.
Friends, if you found the Fierce Planet Adventures podcast helpful, please consider leaving a 5-star review on iTunes or your podcast platform of choice. It helps others find our podcast.
If you screenshot your review and tag us on Instagram, we'll send you a classic Fierce Planet Adventures sticker. For your water bottle, cooler, car, send us a direct message with your mailing address on Instagram, and we'll send you that sticker right out.
Thanks for joining us, and live fiercely.